Hey everybody, it's Gabe. Quick announcement before this episode starts. The Unearthed Tips and Tricks Volume 2 from Crit Academy just came out today, or yesterday, several days before this. What am I doing? It just came out a few days ago, so go check that out. It's on DM's Guild. Check the link in the show notes, or just go to dmsguild.com and type in Unearthed Tips and Tricks Volume 2 or Crit Academy or something. Check it out. It's awesome. I helped write it. It's a great product, much like Unearthed Tips and Tricks Volume 1. So go check that out. Go buy it. Give me your money. All right. I might edit that down a little bit, but
all right.
Welcome to InterPartyConflict, the podcast where we answer your questions so you can have the best tabletop gaming experience possible. My name is Gabe.
My name is Jeff.
And we're going to answer your questions today. But first, I have a question. Jeff, How are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good, actually. I had my last day of work for the next few days because I took I'm taking some time off, so I'm excited for that.
Oh, and what are you taking time off for, Jeff?
No, nothing.
Okay.
Just my,
no reason.
Just my birthday coming up.
What? Your birthday coming up?
Oh.
Now I need to put in some sort of a sound effect for it being your birthday.
Birthday party clown!
If we might end up recording again on my birthday. So
gotcha.
So maybe you can leave it to that. I don't know.
Sure. Well, if you don't want to, if you want to record on a different day, let me know.
No, I mean, it's quarantine. I'm not exactly. I don't have like grand plans or anything, so I'll be around.
Sure. Okay.
So yeah, but I mean, I just was like, I had already been planning on taking some time off around my birthday this year, and it was actually going to be, my parents were going to be sending us out on a trip with like the rest of my family, but that got canceled.
Okay.
So, but I mean, I'm at least going to take the days off. Might as well.
Yeah.
So what's going on with you?
Well, so I just threw some ribs in the slow cooker. Not the slow cooker, in the smoker.
Smoker, yeah.
Sorry. We have a slow cooker, but and I've made ribs in it.
Yeah,
but
ribs in a slow cooker is pretty good too.
Yeah. Yeah, so just toss those in. I'll edit it out, of course, but I will probably at some point in the middle of this recording go out and make sure it's at the right temperature and everything. But yeah, I'm excited about that. That's how exciting my life is. Another thing, not really related, but so a long time ago, a couple years ago at least, my wife noticed that one of the houses a couple blocks over has a big cutout of a Sasquatch in their yard. They have just a big piece of plywood that they cut out in the shape of a Bigfoot.
Yeah. And
she's been super jealous of it ever since for at least a couple years. Every time we drive by there, she looks longingly and, I finally, and I've been telling her for months, I was telling her I will make that for you. All you need to do is just buy the plans for it because you can find it online. And she never got around to it until about 2 months ago. She finally, at the beginning of the quarantine, she ordered it. And then due to shipping stuff, it didn't arrive until just a few days ago. So finally got around to it. So today I went and I cut it out, put pictures of it on Facebook.
Don't you guys have a cardboard cutout of Sasquatch?
We do have a cardboard cutout of Sasquatch. This one's going to go in the yard, though.
Yeah. Well, could you not have used that as a tracing thing, or is it's too blocky?
Here's the thing: we could have, Jeff, and by that I mean I could have, but this was partly me making sure that Lisa was serious enough about this to actually have to do any of the work herself. I could have just opted to do that myself. Maybe I could have even suggested it to her. But if she's not willing to even order the thing online, I don't need to go through the work of building it. You know what I mean?
Okay. So you're not exactly happy about the Sasquatch in the yard?
I'm fine with the Sasquatch. It's just any time that she wants something, anytime that she wants something built, it's oh shoot, now I got to figure out how to build that. So I'm fine. I'm fine with maybe I don't have to do it this time.
Sure.
So that's what I've got going on.
Wasn't there something about window sticker, Sasquatch window sticker? Was that you guys?
She got one for her car.
Yeah, she got one for her car, but she can only find one where it was holding guns, and so she just cut the guns off.
Yes, that was her.
Like, well, was it that she could only find it with guns, or it was cheaper with guns?
It was probably cheaper with guns.
That's ridiculous.
It really is.
I hate this country.
And the thing about that sticker in particular, she put it in like one of the farther back side windows of the car. Yeah. And so every time I'm backing up, I see it in the corner of my eye and I think I'm about to hit a person.
Oh, goodness. Because it's him walking. So.
Yeah, it's like a silhouette of a humanoid walking. And so like for a split second, I'm like, whoa, I stopped the car.
Oh. It's just sassy.
Yep. So that's what's going on in my life right now. Ribs and Sasquatch.
Yeah.
Also, I go back to work in a week. So
right.
The day after this episode goes out, in theory, I will be back at work. So,
well, so
fingers crossed.
Right. Yeah.
All right. You want to go ahead and get into this episode?
Sure.
Cool. So, Jeff, I want you to imagine that you hear a bell ringing off in the distance.
Okay.
And you follow it, and do you know where the bell is?
Where does this bell lead me, Gabe? I'm so interested to hear.
It leads you to the Dragon's Hoard. Sorry. I'm too excited about ribs. I'm not going to come up with some sort of an elaborate thing.
It's too distracted by smoky meat.
Yes. Today's magic item was submitted by Dustin via Discord. And the item is the Clapper of Stonebrook. Now, of course, I'm not talking about the 90s TV commercial product, the Clapper. It's not what I'm talking about. Clap on, clap off, the Clapper. No, I'm talking about the Clapper of a bell. Hence the very elaborate Dragon's Hoard intro.
Oh, that's where that went. Okay, I get it now.
Yes. So, we're recording on a day and time we don't usually record, or something. Maybe not.
It's
not really.
It's not our usual time, but it's still.
It's definitely a different energy than we usually have, and I don't understand why.
Yeah, like
I'm excited about ribs.
Gabe just is making ribs. I just ate a bunch, so I'm kind of like, I don't know. I'm a little overstuffed right now. So yeah, it's gonna be weird.
I'll probably cut all of this out. We'll see. On a misty autumn night, the Crimson Shackle Marauders came to the sleeping hamlet of Stonebrook. Quietly, they crept through the streets, planning to hit every house at once. Unfortunately, they walked right over an urchin sleeping in the street, who woke and realized that death had come to town. He quickly ran to the edge of town where the old guard tower stood. As he scrambled up the base, a marauder took notice and made his way to stop him. The urchin clawed his way to the top where he found the bell in pieces. Panicking, he searched the floor for the clapper. He managed one strike on the bell before it and he was silenced. But that was enough. The villagers were awakened to the danger. The last act of the urchin imbued the short brass piece with magic. Once per day, a user may strike the air with the clapper as if to strike a bell. A peal will ring out, audible for miles, waking every living creature. All who hear it will be filled with the defiance of the urchin and be granted advantage on all will saves versus fear for 10 minutes.
Wow.
So there you go. I want to say good job to Dustin, because a lot of his items have really interesting, evocative backstory.
Mm-hmm.
It's not always necessary, but it's nice when it's well done.
Yeah.
And
honestly, this is my favorite yet of his.
Cool. Yeah, I think this is a really cool one. It has more mechanics than the last one. Like the last one we did, the helmet that makes everybody hate you. This has, not much more mechanics. There isn't really much mechanics to either of these, but I think the mechanics are very simple, easy to understand, and easy to use.
Mm-hmm.
And I've never seen a magic item made of this.
Yeah.
I've never seen one that is a clapper of a bell. Maybe a magic bell once in a blue moon, you'll see a magic item that's a magic bell. But I really like this. I love when an ordinary object is imbued with magic from some heroic deed.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, depending on like what setting you're in, but I like to see that as like one of the deities or something. It's like, good job, you. And you create, like, the deity creates the magic item out of it. And
Sure,
just sort of
sure.
The deity of homeland security.
Okay. This isn't exactly the same thing, but this sort of does something that I really like in magic items, and that's when a magic item was a normal, just an ordinary mundane object, but it was given power by virtue of something. Like I said, in this case, it is someone doing something heroic and giving their life in order to wake everybody is what imbued this with power. Another thing is in the Harry Potter series. There's the Deathly Hallows from Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows. The story that the Deathly Hallows come from, the Deathly Hallows being these 3 powerful magical artifacts. In the story, all 3, or at least 2 of them, I guess the third one's arguable, 2 of them are just ordinary objects that the embodiment of death picks up and gives to someone, and in giving that to them, imbues this ordinary object with something with incredible magic power.
Yeah, he just grabs a branch and it becomes the Elder Wand, and then
a stone out of the river. Yeah. Another one is in the Adventure Zone, in the Adventure Zone Balance, the first campaign. One of the characters is given the goddess of fate gives the character a weapon, and to give him a weapon, she basically just looks over and there's a nearby clock. She pulls off one of the clock hands and hands it to him, and it becomes a magical spear. And I love that. That's one of my favorite things in fiction. That's one of my favorite things in D&D. Like an origin for a magic item where it is just a normal magic item that some sort of, supernatural thing causes it to become magical. Yeah. I like that so much better than, oh yeah, I wanted a +1 sword, so I got my normal sword and I put magic in it. That's just less interesting to me.
Trying to think what else. Oh, when you mentioned Harry Potter, like I thought you were going to be talking about like the Horcruxes, because but at that point, like, Voldemort like chose the items up for his Horcruxes very specifically.
Yeah,
like he was like he wanted them to have this, what prestige about him or whatever.
Sure.
Yeah, so it was like the goblet of Helga Hufflepuff and the locket of Salazar Slytherin. So he was like, it was very important to him that they be these important objects and not just a rock or something. Sure.
I guess actually along those lines, another example from Harry Potter that I think fits this theme a little bit better is Voldemort's journal. Because I could be wrong. Maybe that was explicitly imbued with his essence or whatever, but the impression I always got from the second book is that like it's a journal of his that he put so much of himself into that it became kind of an extension of him. So this magic item, the effect is pretty simple, but I like it. It wakes up every living creature within miles. I think one small nitpick, I would like a specific number of miles just for adjudication purposes. Let's say 1 mile. It wakes up everybody within 1 mile. I think it's not powerful, but it's significant. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I have something to add, but go on.
Okay. And then I really like the advantage on will saves versus fear for 10 minutes. That similarly, not powerful. I mean, the fact that it's given to a whole lot of people is powerful, but it's a really cool, I love that. I love that effect.
Yeah, like it works really well with the story. Like I like that. I love the idea of it. It's like it's the the bell in the middle of of the town that warns of attackers or whatever. So yeah, the idea is like you're giving everybody bonuses to saves against fear, so that when the attackers come, they're not they can, instead of panicking, they can just get out of there.
Yeah.
So what I wanted to add was if this thing can wake up every living thing within a mile, like there could be some consequences to that. Because like, what if there is a slumbering beast about? Perhaps something that sleeps for many years and wakes up and then goes on a rampage.
There you go.
So
that is a plot hook. Yeah.
So that could very much be like that that could cause some trouble.
Sure.
So like I could see this being the start of like a really nasty encounter, or at least a neat adventure.
I was thinking more along the lines of like how inconvenient this would be for all of the nocturnal creatures, or really just every creature's sleep schedule would get thrown off. If it's during the day, all the nocturnal creatures wake up. If it's during the night, all the whatever the day equivalent, diurnal, I think the word is, creatures are woken up.
Yeah.
So I was thinking, how inconvenient would this be? But that Tarrasque that was asleep a mile down in the earth,
right?
It gets woken up too.
Yep.
I like
or just
that.
it could be any monster in general, really. Like it doesn't have to be the Tarrasque. So if you do want to use that plot hook, but you don't necessarily want to throw a Tarrasque at your party, like
sure,
it could be a maybe there's like a owl bear or something in a cave nearby that usually sleeps peacefully, but it's hibernating. There you go. But no, like I really like this, and like the fact that it's once per day though, in the wrong hands, that could be really inconvenient for a lot of people, because you just keep waking people up in the middle of the night. Like it's just some kid gets their hands on it and nobody can sleep anymore. But then like everybody's got advantage against fear, so then like when like monsters do show up, they're like, whatever. I haven't slept in days. Who cares?
Yeah, there you go. Okay. Do you have anything else for this?
No, I like this one a lot though. Like I love this. I love the idea.
Yeah, I mean, Dustin has submitted a lot of items, and a lot of I would say all of them have been good, at least good. This one I think is one of the best. I would say is very, very good. All right. Well, I think that'll do it for the Dragon's Hoard for today. So again, thank you, Dustin. That was the Clapper of Stonebrook. Jeff, if anybody else wanted to submit magic items for the Dragon's Hoard, or if they wanted to submit questions for us to discuss, or stories for the Funeral Pyre or Retirement Village, how would they get those to us?
They could send us an email at interpartyconflict@gmail.com, or join us on our Discord at bit.ly/interpartydiscord.
That's correct. And before we go any further, we have a giveaway today. We're giving away a copy of Unearthed Tips and Tricks Volume 1. And shoot, I completely forgot. I will actually, I'm going to go back and record a thing to put at the beginning of this episode, because Unearthed Tips and Tricks Volume 2 just came out.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you are listening to this, we're giving away a copy of Unearthed Tips and Tricks Volume 1, but you should go check out Unearthed Tips and Tricks Volume 2 as well, because it's a great product, similar to how the first one is a great product. I helped write both, and I'm very, very excited for the second one to be out. I'm really excited for, see how big of a response it gets.
Yeah.
So anyway, for anybody who doesn't know what this product is, Unearthed Tips and Tricks is a segment on the Crit Academy podcast where every episode they give a character concept, an encounter concept, a monster variant, a magic item, a DM tip, and player tip. And then the supplements are 25 of each of those put together into, an easy to access file that has, all the text right there. You can refer to it whenever you want. It's a great product, great stuff from the podcast, compiled into a very easy to use product. So we're giving away Volume 1 today. So Jeff, who is the winner of Unearthed Tips and Tricks Volume 1?
Our winner today is Joe S.
Winner. Gobble, gobble, gobble. Yes, congratulations, Joe S. You should be getting that in your email pretty soon. Be sure to leave Crit Academy a review whenever you get that, whether you like it or you don't like it. If you leave a review, it'll get more exposure. It'll let them and me know what they can improve on in the future. And, it's always good to get feedback, even if the feedback is negative. But hopefully it's not negative. Hopefully you'll like it.
Yeah.
And Jeff, if anybody else wanted to be like Joe S. and they wanted to win a free copy of this awesome supplement and then possibly purchase the second one, how would they do that?
They can send us an email at interpartyconflict@gmail.com, but the subject line you want to put Unearthed Tips and Tricks.
Yes. So thank you very much to Justin from Crit Academy for helping give away these free copies of this great supplement. Thank you to Joe S. for entering, and good luck to everybody else who has entered and will hopefully win sometime soon.
Yeah.
And then next up, I want to direct everybody to our Patreon. Patreon is an online platform. You can pledge to donate a certain amount of money per month to the creator of your choice. If you head to patreon.com/InterPartyConflict, we've got a few different reward tiers on there. If you give us $1, we've got outtakes. We've got fantasy fiction that I've written, some of which I'm turning into audio format, so you can listen to them as well as read them. For a $5 tier, we've got monthly bonus podcast. I think we already put out the one for this month, but pretty soon we'll be getting out the one for next month. And in a segment that I probably cut out from earlier in this episode, we've already gotten an idea for what our next one's going to be.
Oh, right. Yep.
And then also on the top tier, we've got a monthly Roll20 game that we will probably be doing in the next couple weeks after this episode goes out. So I'm currently running an Eberron game, and so far it's been a lot of fun. So anyway, once again, if you want to help out the show and get some cool rewards, you can go to patreon.com/InterPartyConflict. Check out the rewards, see if anything appeals to you. And thank you, of course, to all of our people who have continued to support us during the pandemic that's going on right now. We really appreciate it. Even if money's tight, we really appreciate that you guys are willing to support the show.
Yes, thank you very much.
And then just one more thing, check out the other podcasts on the Crit Nation Fellowship. Check out Crit Academy. I already mentioned them. You can find them at critacademy.com. It's a podcast where Justin, Ian, and Brandon create new and reusable content for players and DMs alike. You can check out Brute Force and Ignorance. That's an actual play podcast on the network. And also check out D&D Character Lab, where Garen and Dan made characters every week and pitted them against each other to debate whose characters were better. Enough of all that. Let's get into some questions.
Okay, our first question comes from My Other Account Died on Reddit, and
sorry, Jeff. My Other Account Died 1. Because my other account died was taken.
Of course. And they ask, can contradictory characters that go against established norms for race, class, and personality combinations be fun? So I imagine, like, instead of a orc barbarian, you have an orc bard or something.
Sure, or like a halfling barbarian.
Yeah.
Or a dwarf. Shoot, dwarves do just about anything, don't they? Dwarf bard, I guess. I don't know.
Dwarves are just awesome, Gabe. I don't know what you're talking about.
I guess.
The best.
Yeah, so just but not only that, maybe a barbarian that is a noble. Or sure. a wizard that is illiterate, or, any kind of, like, you've got the typical archetypes. You've got your Conan the Barbarian. Mm-hmm. You've got your elven wizard that's all bookish. You've got your gnome with the goofy outlook on life and personality.
Yeah.
Could you make a character that goes against those and still have that character be fun?
I think that's nowadays, for me at least, making characters, I try to go against the norms just to make it a little bit more interesting, or to or sometimes challenge myself, because, like, the way that the stats work in most RPGs is, like, if you want a barbarian and you want the best barbarian, you're probably going to have to go with something like an orc or some equivalent.
Yeah.
So, like, yeah, I feel like it is more fun not to throw shade on any of the classics, like, who doesn't want to be Legolas and be an elf,
yeah.
with a bow, who doesn't want to do that?
Sure. The simple answer, the very simple answer for this is, yeah, absolutely. Of course it can be fun. Like you said, Jeff, I also often purposely try to go against the norms because I want my character to stand out, because I don't want to just go with the stereotypical character everybody plays. Yeah. There have even been times, I'll admit, there have been times where, like, I will sort of roll my eyes a little bit whenever I hear that somebody is playing an orc barbarian or
sure.
some other thing that's really, may be considered overdone. I shouldn't do that. I'll own up to that. That's unfair of me.
Yeah. I'm guilty of that once or twice. I was like, yeah, no, but especially when it's like newer players and they're like, you're just introducing them to D&D. It's like, well,
sure.
What do most people outside of D&D know about fantasy worlds? It's like, okay, they've heard of Lord of the Rings, easy. So, like, okay, I thought Legolas was pretty cool in that movie, so I want to, back to him,
So I definitely need to stop doing that. And whenever I catch myself doing it, I try to make a mental effort not to think of things that way.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I often try to make characters that do go against the norm. Now, I've talked before about, like, I feel like this has come up on the show a lot, where a lot of people don't realize that you can go against the norms. When people think of a barbarian, they think, oh yeah, you have to be a barbarian. You have to be like a person that lives out in the forest.
You have to be barbaric.
Exactly. Like you have to be a tribe, part of a tribe of some nomadic people or whatever. Yeah. And that is one way to play the character, but it is not the only way to play the character. To play the character, you can, even if you are, if you are not necessarily a brand new player, but if you are familiar enough with the game to start reskinning things, you can actually reskin quite a bit of the character and make an existing character class or archetype feel completely new and kind of magical. Mm-hmm. For example, Barbarian, we always think of, okay, yeah, you get really angry. The ability is literally called Rage. But it doesn't have to be that your character just gets angry. It could be that your character enters a state of like hyper focus, that they push, all of the unnecessary stuff out of the way. So maybe like if they have access to spells, they can't cast spells, obviously, because they're focused on combat. But they get all the advantages, the mechanical advantages of Rage, but it's not from anger. It's not from, uncivility or whatever. It's from like, you're just super focused on combat.
Yeah.
You can make a fighter that, a lot of people think of fighters as like, oh yeah, I was in the militia, I was in the army, whatever. You can make a fighter that has never picked up a weapon. However, once he picks up a weapon, realizes, oh my goodness, I know exactly what I'm doing. Somehow I am amazing at this.
Yeah.
And that can be a lot of fun. But some people will say, no, you have to play someone who you have to justify the character's proficiencies because of the training that they've gotten. Mm-hmm. That's one way to play the character. That's even, I would say, a very common way to play the character, but it's not the only way to play the character.
Yeah, I think sometimes the wording of like the abilities and everything, and like they do kind of put a bit of a backstory to the classes in like the player's handbook.
Yeah,
like they kind of force them into those little stereotypes, but like again, sure. It's D&D. Do what you want. Like, the numbers, as long as the numbers are the same, that's what keeps things balanced.
Yeah.
Everything else is up to you.
Yeah. I feel like to an extent, and this might be why I'm kind of unfair to people who go with the typical archetypes. I think part of my brain, I consider reskinning or going against the archetypes. I think of that as like, that's how you can tell when someone has leveled up as far as making their characters goes. Like when you start the game, you make all the archetypes, but then one day you reach a new level, you reach a new tier where you're like, oh, I don't have to do that. And then you make a character that goes against type. And that's when you're really playing the game. Again, It's not fair to do that. Sometimes I have made characters that do fit the archetypes because I just feel like playing the archetypes. Mm-hmm. I would hate for somebody to be silently judging me for that. So I acknowledge I should not have this mindset, but
right, yeah, it feels like sort of like a gatekeepery thing. It's like no,
sure,
like
sure,
do what you want. If it's comfortable, do it. Like as long as you're playing the game and having fun.
Yeah. So absolutely, please, nobody take from what I'm saying as you shouldn't do the archetypes. Play them all forever. They're fun. Yep. They're tried and true. People do them because they're good.
Yep. Old man wizard. Awesome. Do it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think when I do play like a stereotype, I think I usually try to put some little tiny wrinkle in there so that if you were to look into it, you'd realize, oh, it's not quite exactly that.
Yeah.
I have a character in a story I was writing that, for all intents and purposes, is the stereotypical aged wizard. Old man wizard, uses magic and knows all this arcane lore and whatnot. But there would be a little twist in the story at some point where you find out, oh, he's actually not an old man wizard. He's actually an adolescent changeling. He's an adolescent changeling sorcerer.
Okay.
And he's been keeping up this persona of the aged wizard because then people will not look at him as critically. He can kind of act however he wants because he's old and eccentric, when in reality it's because he's young and inexperienced, and nobody bats an eye when, he just makes up some magical terms that nobody's heard of. Oh,
Right.
it's because it's beyond anything that I've learned. No, it's because he just made it up.
Yeah, that's just a kooky old town wizard.
Yeah,
When in reality, it's just some punk kid like shooting spells.
sure. I remember Chris.
Ding.
Chris once had a character that when we first started playing with him, he intentionally made it so that you could look at him and perceive him as like several different of the archetypes. I think he like wore armor, used a sword or some sort of weapon or something. So you would think, oh, okay, he's a fighter. But then he also had some magic powers that he would use like when nobody was looking. And so you'd think, oh, okay, maybe he's like a sorcerer or a wizard or something. But actually he was a scion or something. But and he had a spell book. He wasn't a wizard, but he had a spell book.
Uh-huh.
And so he was kind of, again, just trying to play with the going against the norms.
Mm-hmm.
He kind of wanted you to think he was every archetype, but in reality, he was like a sorcerer scion multi-class, I think.
Okay. Yeah, that's pretty good. Yeah, just to kind of like mess with everybody.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, thank you, kind ranger, and you, faithful paladin, and you, sir.
You. I think another thing that another part of this that I think is worth mentioning is like the differing personalities. You can play a paladin that's all like holier than thou and always harping on about their code and stopping the party members from doing whatever they want. That's a common archetype, specifically because in older editions that was kind of a requirement. Like to be a 3rd edition paladin, most of the personality traits that people associate with paladins were either part of the rules, as in you had to do this, or just the abilities that they had very much lent them to that type of play style. So it's very common for people to continue using those even today. But I think it's especially with a class like that has so much baggage. I think those are especially fun to see what else can I do with this. Can I play a lawful good paladin of there's the Paladin Oath of Devotion, I think it is, that is pretty close to what the original 3rd edition. I say original. 3rd edition was not the original,
right?
But what it is the traditional paladin.
Yeah, the classic.
It's fun to look at this oath and then say, okay, so I've got honesty. I can't lie or cheat. I've got to be courageous. I've got to be compassionate. I've got to be honorable. How can I push the boundaries of that, but still staying true to that oath?
Mm-hmm.
And how can I, maybe my character's a monk. Maybe I don't use armor with this character. Or maybe I'm multi-class with monk even. And so I don't wear big, heavy armor. Maybe I use my fists or something. Maybe I drink a lot. Maybe like that's a thing. Like I really let loose when I drink or something like that. What are ways that I can still be courageous? Maybe my character is terrified all the time, but he's immune to fear or something. Like he feels terrified even though he's not suffering the game mechanics effects of fear.
Oh, that's interesting, actually. Like
maybe my character never lies, but if he doesn't want to tell the truth, he just immediately clams up.
Sure.
Or something like that.
Yeah, he has like a really bad tell.
Yeah.
That's an interesting concept though. Like having the class abilities or whatever that give you like advantage against fear or whatever, but like you as the character are still scared out of your mind, but because you have these class abilities, you get the advantage. So you still like you're like darn it, I have to fight because I'm not immobilized,
Sure.
Like
I know I should be terrified right now,
right?
But
yeah. I'm
not.
Yeah, it's not like you're like haha, no, I'm steadfast in my heroics. It's like no, I'm terrified, but I'm just compelled to keep going because of my class abilities or whatever.
Yeah.
Like it's sort of like the class abilities are a curse on the character rather instead of a benefit.
Okay. Here's an idea, and this is kind of getting off topic, but I did have an idea. What if you played a paladin where your oath is character-wise is treated more like a compulsion rather than something you are willingly devoting yourself to.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's the spell, I think it's pronounced Geas. The spell, it's Geas.
Right.
Just like it's like a magical effect that compels you to do a specific task. What if your backstory is you are just a normal person, but like an angel or, I don't know, a demon or whatever the heck oath you're choosing to follow, some sort of creature put this magical curse on you that forces you to act in these certain ways.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think that could be an interesting, subversion of the Paladin type of character.
Right. Yeah. So you're still playing to that classic Paladin, but there's a little twist in there.
Sure. I've always been a fan of the monk, and, monks tend towards specific personalities, especially back in 3rd edition when you had to be lawful to be a monk. Right, even though you don't have to be lawful nowadays, but not by the rules. A lot of people do still play monks as like the stoic, the ascetic, the person who has been training their mind and body for years and years, and so they're very disciplined and so on.
Yeah, like always meditating. And
sure. What if you're just a dude with powers? You know what I mean? Like you woke up one day and you had these key abilities or something.
Yeah, play it up like a superhero origin story or something.
Sure. And then the Drunken Master, I think I'm blanking on whether the Drunken Master is an official archetype in 5th edition. I'm sure there have been DM's Guild supplements for it, but in outside of D&D, there is the archetype in fiction and such of the Drunken Master. That is a person that maybe is just a normal person, but when they get drunk or they are in some other way, not operating under their own faculties, they suddenly gain all of this hyper awareness and supreme reflexes and all this stuff. Like they're in, I think drunken fighting is an actual martial arts discipline, or was at one point, where it's not that you're actually drunk, it's that you are imitating the motions of someone that's drunk. And as a result, you're unpredictable. And so your opponent they don't know what you're going to do, so they don't know how to defend against you. But in D&D and in fiction, there have been characters where when you are drunk, when you drink alcohol or some other substance like that, you gain all of these abilities you don't have when you're sober. And so I think that could just very simply, just that part of the personality, that could be a character in D&D. You don't have any special abilities until you fall out of your normal faculties, and then suddenly you have this preternatural sense for, your opponents and how to fight against them and so on. That could be a way to subvert the monk stereotype.
Yeah. There is a Way of the Drunken Master. It's in Xanathar's Guide.
Xanathar's. Okay. I couldn't remember if I had seen it in an official source or an unofficial or whatever.
Yeah. I'm not going to go into the whole thing, but I don't remember it being like super, super like exciting. But then again, usually none of the monk ones are like, they'll sometimes have some like a cool, it'll always sound cool. But then when you look at it, it's like, I don't know.
Sure. So yeah, I guess, again, simple answer to the question. Yes, it can be fun. Pretty much anything can be fun if you have fun with it, if you do it in a way that's fun. But not only that, like I encourage anybody who is willing, I encourage them to go outside the archetypes, try to find the weirdest possible combination you can think of, and then find a way to make that, number one, fun, and number two, effective.
Yeah. Sometimes like randomizers, like if you find like a website that'll randomize stuff like this, like you could be like, all right, you roll or you can just use rolling charts or something, like roll a random race, class, archetype, whatever, or background, and just try to find a way to make them fit.
Sure.
Could be fun. There have been times in the past where I've tried to make things that are like not quite, the usual, but then they end up like, when I stand back and look at them, I'm like, oh crap, I just made. I think I may have brought it up once before, but like I made a turtle that I gave him levels of like ranger And I was like, I'll throw some monk in there. And then I was like, oh, he's going to be all about like being in the shadows and stuff. Dang it. I made a Ninja Turtle. Like,
right.
It's like, what did I do?
Yeah.
It's like, I told myself I wasn't going to use Turtle to make Ninja Turtles. I told myself I wasn't going to do this.
It's how it always goes.
Yeah.
Hey, Jeff.
Yeah.
I'm going to roll the stats for an effing obnoxious dwarf bard from a broken home who hates to be touched.
Is that's that one website?
Website, yeah. It has a swear in the title, so I will censor it. Who the F is my dndcharacter.com. And I'll put that in the show notes so you can click on the link. And it just gives you they just have like a Markov chain or something of a bunch of words that they will fill in. But it just gives you a ridiculous character concept. And a lot of them go against type because it's all randomized.
Yeah.
And all of them are hilarious.
Yeah. There's some good ones that pop up in there.
Yeah. So yeah, I absolutely encourage anybody to go outside, go against type whenever you want to change things up a bit. I think it can be very fun.
I agree. All right. Our next question comes from Slab Bench Press on Reddit, and they ask, what are your thoughts on how ranged combat works in D&D and other fantasy games? For example, bows always use dexterity and melee weapons are usually strength. Could the system be more realistic without making it less fun?
Yeah. So I think you had some stuff to say about this that was specifically about how D&D 5th edition handles the descriptive words for stuff. Yeah,
the differences between like melee and ranged in 5th edition can get kind of confusing. I mean, that specific is confusing. Like, yeah, one's ranged, one's melee, obviously. But like in 5th edition, there are there'll be like class abilities that will be okay. This is an attack.
Sure.
So an attack could be basically anything. So it's like when you attack something, this happens. So an attack could be a spell attack. Like a spell that you're casting that you're using an attack roll for. Like anything that you are using an attack roll for, that is an attack. Or it might say like when you do a melee attack. It's like, okay, so I'm attacking in melee. Yeah. Or it could say like a melee weapon attack, which is different than a melee attack because a melee weapon attack is an attack you make with a melee weapon, whereas a melee attack is an attack you make in melee, not necessarily with a melee weapon. It could be your fist, it could be a chair, it could be anything. It could be a grapple, I think, is technically a melee attack.
I think so. Could be wrong, but I think so. We did an episode about grappling, and I've already shoved it out of my memory long ago.
Yeah. So similarly with range, there's attacks, there's ranged attacks, and then there's ranged weapon attacks.
Mm-hmm. And then there's ranged attacks with a thrown weapon, which are different than ranged attacks with a ranged weapon.
Right. So there will be things that are your ranged weapon attacks get a bone, like they're the archery weapon style from like fighter and a couple other classes get it. I think get that as an option. Yep. It specifically says ranged weapon attacks. So if I am a thrown weapon character, I cannot use that,
right? Because
I am throwing a melee weapon. It is a ranged attack, but it's not a ranged weapon attack.
Yeah, I recently saw a Sage Advice where Jeremy Crawford said something that very often when somebody asks a fairly direct question, he'll give a response that he could have just said yes or no, but instead he says something that could be taken to justify whatever it is you already thought, or it could be taken to mean the opposite. And he said something that at the time I thought meant that all attacks with a weapon at range count as ranged weapon attacks, but it could also be taken to the opposite because he didn't just say the answer.
I'm not sure which one you're talking about because I remember looking into this exact thing and looking up the Sage Advice and being like, darn you, why can't you let me have fun?
I think this one was fairly recent, but what I'm saying is that it didn't clarify anything.
Sure. Yeah, that does happen sometimes in these, like with the Sage Advice. It's like, it's either like no with no explanation or or it's some like a long explanation that doesn't actually, tell you what the rule is.
Sure.
So yeah, like I was like, okay, I want a character who's all about throwing knives or something.
Yeah.
And it's like there are rules for doing that, but then there are a bunch of like ranged like feats and abilities and things like that where that like if you're using throwing weapons, it's just different. They just don't let you do it.
Yeah.
Like if you want to throw multiple knives, you can only throw, so many knives in a turn because you actually because they're melee weapons, you have to still draw them.
Yeah.
Whereas if it's a bow, if you have 3 attacks in a round, you can shoot. If you could do 3 attacks in one attack action,
mm-hmm.
you shoot 3 arrows.
Yeah.
But if I wanted to do that with daggers.
Oh, with a dagger, you can only draw 1 per round. Right.
So like you could technically, I think you could still technically do that, but like if you only had 1 hand free or whatever, you can only throw at most 2 daggers.
Yeah.
Like you are limited by the fact that you can only draw one. You can only draw one thing without using up an action. So it's like, would that break things? Is that like would that make things unbalanced if you just you just add like ammunition to one, like you add like the ammunition keyword or something to to a dagger or something? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean the question of will that break the game? Like will that be unbalanced? Is I think really something a lot more people should address with this. And here's what I mean by that. I'll say that in D&D, it's pretty standard that you have like, okay, in 3rd edition, it was, and I think the question used this as an example. In 3rd edition, melee attacks were always strength, and that's for attack and damage. Range attacks were always dexterity, and that's for attack and damage. I've played briefly other RPGs where the attack roll is always the same stat no matter what type of attack you're making, whether it's a melee attack, a range attack, a spell attack, an energy gun attack, whatever. It's always the same. Like you have an accuracy stat and then the damage is based off of something else. And okay, that is all quote unquote realistic, maybe. Some of it is more realistic than others, but like having an accuracy stat is, I guess, more realistic than having all melee attacks use the same stat for attack and damage, all range attacks use the same stat for attack and damage. But is it more fun? In 4th edition D&D, more or less every class could just use the stat that class wants to use for attack rolls. Like if you're a okay, but sorry, back to 3rd edition. If you're a wizard and you shoot a ray, you don't use your intelligence score, your intelligence stat to determine the accuracy of your ray. You use your dexterity stat because it is a ranged attack.
Yeah.
If you are making a spell touch attack, if you're casting harm and you have to touch someone to cast harm on them, you used your strength stat to make that attack roll. True, it was a touch attack, so it was probably going to be fairly accurate because their AC was lower to it. But even still, wizards had to use their strength and dexterity to attack with their spells.
Right, yeah, I forgot about that.
In 5th edition, they erased that, and now pretty much every spell is you make a spell attack roll, which uses your spellcasting ability score, and that's great. But in 4th edition, it was much more explicit that some classes used strength for all of their abilities. Some classes used dexterity for all of their abilities. Some classes used intelligence for all their abilities. Some classes used wisdom for all their abilities or charisma for all their abilities. I don't think there were any classes that used constitution for their abilities, but that would have been cool.
What, in 4th edition there was?
4th edition.
There was, it was the warden.
Okay.
The last time we played 4th edition, that was the class that I used.
Yeah.
He had a lot of stuff that went off of Constitution. It was good. Sure.
And okay, that means that you can really whore out that stat. And I say, no problem.
Yep.
Sure, go for it. It's not realistic for you to attack someone with your constitution, but also it's not realistic for you to attack someone with your wisdom either. You know, I mean, it's fun. It's a good game mechanic when you can be good at the thing that you're good at all the time.
Yeah.
You know, okay, you can play a game where everybody feels less powerful, whatever. That's a different issue. But like, I just think that ranged attack systems often try to make them realistic in that you've got, you know, your dexterity or whatever. The argument has been made for decades. Well, why can't I use my intelligence to aim the attack?
Right, yeah. Or your wisdom because you're using your eyesight. So it's like it's going off of your perception. So like maybe you're more accurate because you see better or you hear better or something.
And like, I feel like D&D's method kind of goes against what you would expect with strength, because you think of the big, strong fighter being less accurate because they're not as fast.
Mm-hmm.
But in D&D, no. You can be a completely muscle-bound giant and your attacks are as fast as possible because you are so incredibly strong.
Sure.
Your accuracy using a 30 strength score is exactly the same as if you were using a 30 dexterity score.
Mm-hmm.
So D&D's method is not realistic, but I don't think that's a problem. I think that it could do being a little bit less realistic. In fact, like I would like to go back to 4th edition where you didn't need strength if you were not a strength-based class.
Right.
And that was okay.
I mean, 5th edition does okay with it, I feel like, for the most part. And like there are some ways to kind of get around like your primary stat.
Sure.
Or to use your primary stat for more than just like what your class is built to do. So I mean, like there's the Hexblade is a good go-to for warlocks because it makes it so you can use your charisma modifier to fight in melee.
Okay.
Like you don't have to do packed weapon, but packed weapon is basically you're assumed that you're going to take packed weapon if you go with Hexblade, but it makes it so you can apply your charisma score to your attacks and damage with your packed weapon or your chosen weapon.
And if I could just interject, I remember that in 4th edition, you didn't use, if you were just making a basic attack, you weren't using one of your class's powers, but then again, your class has at-will powers, so in pretty much every case, you're still going to be using your preferred ability score. If you just made a basic attack, ranged was always dexterity, melee was always strength. However, there were feats you could take that would replace that with the stat of your choice. So if you were playing a high charisma sorcerer and you wanted to be able to make basic attacks with your charisma, you could, and it just cost you a feat to do so.
Yeah, and like I like that. I think that's cool.
Yeah. So like you were saying with the Hexblade,
you're choosing your archetype or whatever your specialization, but I mean like that's what you want to do. There's also, I found out there not too long ago I looked into the Shillelagh Spell, which like like who uses the Shillelagh Spell?
Yeah.
It's awesome. It turns any like club, which is pretty much any stick off the ground, into it's like a 1d8 weapon, but it uses your wisdom modifier, or it uses your
whatever your spellcasting modifier is, but it's a druid spell primarily, so it's probably your wisdom.
It's a druid spell, but I think a one like the nature cleric, I think gets access to it. So yeah, like so with you're able to use, you can be a cleric or a druid that is like you put all your points into wisdom but still do some melee damage because you're using the Shillelagh spell, Yeah. I think it's really cool.
I think that's a perfectly fine way to make the game, even if it costs make it cost some small resource, but like just for simplicity's sake and for ease of play, let people just use whatever their character is already good at for basic things.
Yeah.
Maybe not all things. I'm sure somebody could come up with an argument for why that should not be the case, but for something just like basic attacks, make it be that your character can take an ability that lets them use their whatever stat of their choice for the equivalent of a basic attack. Because like it sucks to be the character that you just want to be able to just make a normal attack and you can't because your stats suck.
Yeah.
And I don't know. It's never fun to feel powerless. Sure, there's reason to do it sometimes, but
yeah,
I don't know.
And it's always tough making a character that's supposed to be good at that one thing, and then it doesn't work out because of a stupid low roll or something like that. So like, I don't know. There are a few things in D&D that make it kind of hard to like make the character exactly the way you want it.
Yeah.
Within the mechanics. That's, I don't know, because sometimes it is hard to explain to a newer player, like, oh no, you actually can't do that.
Sure.
Like, yes, you don't want to say no in most cases, but like there are supposedly there are reasons for the way that they balance things like range, like ranged attacks. Like going back to like building a character for throwing weapons, like why can't I throw more than like 2 daggers in a round? Like why is that? What's the, like, I have the daggers, like that's not the problem. Like, if you want me to count arrows, I can count arrows, but like why, like what makes me more powerful that I'm throwing the daggers that instead of just shooting arrows? Like, what's the difference? Yeah. Like, if there is a difference, I want to know it. But
yeah, because you could just, if you really wanted to do what you're talking about, you could just use a bow and reskin it as you are throwing daggers.
Sure. So I mean, like there are darts, which are a thrown ranged weapon. Like it's a ranged weapon, but it's a thrown weapon. So like, and they basically have the exact same stats as a dagger. It's just that they're not daggers. So if you wanted to be the guy that like I guess the main thing is like, well, if you have a ranged weapon, you can't fight in melee as easily. So like, I guess maybe that's the balancing factor, is that like
maybe
they don't want somebody to be able to stab somebody and then immediately throw, their dagger or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, that could make sense, but part of me doubts that was the thought process behind it, just because like we had an episode a few weeks ago about weapon types and like, why is the weapon list the way that the weapon list is? Because not all of some of them are identical to others. So clearly they didn't not everything in the weapons list was 100% curated. Some of it just got in by mistake.
Yeah.
So,
yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah, it's like what is it? Spear and trident are exactly the same thing, but one of them is a simple weapon, one of them is a martial weapon, but they're exactly the same.
Yeah. So I guess to answer the question, the answer was like, could the system be more realistic without making it less fun? Maybe, but I doubt it. Like, I think that adding any more realism to it is going to make it more complicated, and more complicated does not always equal more fun. Mm-hmm. Most of the time it is less fun.
Right, yeah.
It's probably possible someone could maybe come up with a system that is fun and realistic, but I doubt it. I can't think of anything.
Right. Yeah, anytime I come up with a new idea, I'm like always trying to figure out a way to put it into mechanics, and I'm like, that's just making things more complicated, and it takes the fun out of the idea. So I was just like, well, you know what, just flavor it. Flavor it how you want, I guess.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that'll do it for our regular questions for today. We do still have our social media questions, though. And last social media question was, imagine your dream gaming room. What are some features you would want to include? So do you remember what you said?
I think I said an empty warehouse with VR headsets.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think I said something like an easy way to communicate with the players in secret would be pretty cool. Mm-hmm. The typical ones, mood lighting, music, stuff like that. So we got a few responses over on Facebook. Dan W says, a beer fridge next to me. That's it, really. I'm a simple DM, or maybe just simple. So there you go. Sean M says, I'm shopping for my first home and dreaming big. I'd be lying if I didn't say I hadn't thought about my gaming space. A nice big table with ample room for players' books and materials, as well as space for the maps. then I think Sean is saying a DM's end table to have the extra materials on hand, I think is what he's saying. So just like a space to put all the DM stuff. Heavily scotch guarded or whatever to keep spills off of it. Fill the room shelves of books of all sorts. Some nice to hang things like thematic posters or props. I may or may not have a spiked flail. A cooler for drinks, both hard and RC Cola. Thumbs up from me. And some snacks. And good AC. Can't have a bunch of bodies in a room without airflow.
Right.
It's definitely true. So yeah, I think there's a lot of really cool stuff in there. I hadn't really thought of like space to put props because yes, I want there to be props.
Yeah, like lots of shelving and storage.
Yeah. And also when we bought our house, like I was also putting thought into where we're going to play. I think at one point we have a storage room in our basement. At one point I was thinking of turning that into a gaming room, but then my wife actually suggested that I just use the main basement room, like the much larger open basement space as gaming. And then she would turn the spare room into like a walk-in closet.
Yeah, and that worked. So, I mean, like we've had some good game nights in the basement. So
we have. Chris F says, I don't know, screen for digital minis and sets, also digital copies of all the books, and smaller individual screens for everyone else. I'd also probably want to record everything so I don't have to remember or take as many hours during a session. And that's kind of cool. If you want to make it much more like technological, digital screens, recording software, recording hardware. Yeah, if we're talking about a dream gaming room, I definitely could include all that stuff too.
Yeah.
Justin H says, people and pizza. Also a DM that isn't me.
Sure.
I definitely feel you there. Eric B says, friends who, thanks to magic, now love D&D.
Wait, real magic or
magic I guess we're bringing magic into the equation. I guess, well, actually, it's not capitalized, so I assumed that Eric meant like just snap your fingers and now your friends love D&D.
Sure.
Maybe he means I got them into Magic the Gathering and now they love D&D.
Yeah. Which I mean, like, definitely different. That like, I don't know if there's like a ton of similarities between a trading card game and a tabletop
I mean,
game. But I mean,
it's more if they're interested in one type of fantasy game, maybe they'd be interested in another.
Sure.
Over on Reddit, Scottish Unicorn Clan says, a music or sound system with surround sound. I love to use music when I DM to set the mood or add drama. So that would have to be included.
Yeah.
And yeah,
I like using soundboards.
Well, it's been a nice run, everybody. We had 170 episodes. I've put the little like fake out ending in like 4 episodes in a row.
Yeah, it's always in reaction to something horrible I've done.
Yep. Moving on. Alistar the Minotaur says, a team of creative folks to put together terrain sets like they have in Fantasy High or Escape from the Blood Keep on Dimension 20. I don't know what any of those things are, but they
sound awesome.
However, I'd settle for modular terrain. Also a table designed for gaming, a nice little insert that folds up into a DM screen, and an elevated swivel chair that fits into the space. It's less about lording over my players and more about accessing the minis on the table. And I absolutely agree. Whenever I use a Dungeon Master screen, which I don't always, but I do sometimes, I always feel like I have to spend the whole thing like hunched over the table, like, like an evil warlord looking from a magical view screen in the sky. But no, I want to be able to reach the stuff, and I've got this barrier in front of me.
Right, yeah.
Stop Calling Me Jesus says, I'd love the room to have the look of an old rustic tavern or long forgotten dungeon. And yes, I agree. Jesus, I mean, not Jesus.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I would like, if it is, money and space notwithstanding, I would love to have a room that looks like a fantasy space.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like you have like one room, like, you have one room that looks like a tavern, one room that looks like some wilderness setting or like a cave or something. And then another room that's a dungeon. So you're like, all right, you guys are going into the dungeon now and let's all move on to the other room.
I suppose. I mean, maybe not quite like that, but that could be fun.
Yeah.
Anything to immerse you a little bit more.
Yeah.
Over on Twitter, Yodelay, he who says, a table that can expand in size for those occasions when I craft large and elaborate battle maps. Also, multiple places where I could project images and documents for all the players to see. I agree. It's all good.
Mm-hmm.
Quallywood Squares says, keg fridge, separate door for pizza deliveries, and some very comfy chairs for those marathon sessions. There is a TV show called Nowhere Man that our friend Steve and I have been recording a podcast about, that although we have like 50 hours worth of podcast recorded, has not actually come out yet. And there's an episode in that where the main character is a pizza delivery guy for that episode, and he delivers a pizza to this house where there's an automated slot that opens up, dispenses money, and then like sucks in the pizza. And I just thought now, again, if we're doing like pie in the sky, whatever you can imagine, it would be cool if there was just like a chute that a pizza would slide down and just land in the middle of the room.
You pull a chain above you, like.
Yes. A little alarm goes off because and like a monitor turns on so you can see the person delivering the pizza.
Well, like it's like you pull a chain and then it's like it cuts to like, you know, some guys sitting down or like sitting around like lounging, like smoking a cigarette, like reading a newspaper, and it pulls a chain and it rings a bell, and they quickly get up and run into a kitchen and start making a pizza.
So it's like they have a dedicated make me a pizza switch.
Right. Yep.
Okay. That's pretty good. Just a direct line straight to the pizza place.
Right. Yeah. Or it's a chain that they pull, and it kind of like goes along the like electrical lines in your neighborhood down to the local pizza shop. And it's like, oh, there it is. You know, there's the alarm.
In fact, there is a conveyor belt oven that just goes straight from their pizzeria to your basement.
Right. Yeah. It comes out piping hot. You know, it's set at a very low temperature so that it, you know, by the time it gets to you, it's
right. Low and slow.
Yeah.
Kara Karn says, a soundproof force field that keeps my wife and children and any other unwanted people out unless I allow them in. Yeah. There you go.
Yeah. Well, that's why you have like a warehouse that you rent out.
And then the pizza delivery person has a special suit that lets them walk through the force field.
Right, yeah.
So in the eventuality where you have become an evil warlord and you are threatening the world, the pizza delivery people have to rise up and fight against you because they're the only ones that can reach you.
Right, yeah.
Anyway,
it's like we can't penetrate his force field, but the legends say there was once a pizza man who could.
There you go. Over on Discord, we actually only got a couple. One of them's pretty long though. Stiltskin Kupo 84 says, one half of my dream gaming table has two of that table. One, and I think he might be referring to, I put a photo of a very, very intricate LED lit gaming table.
Right.
One for role-playing and another for war games like Risk, Axis, and Allies, etc. Also, I would have a PC desk and a monitor mounted on all four walls plus the desk, just in case I had a visual aid to use as a quest enhancement. Surround sound would be nice, and of course, bookshelves for my manuals. I'm very bothered by the need to clean my D&D table and then remember where all the folders are and set the PC back up, etc. Plus, for war games, you really can't put them away and then continue later from the same point. You could take a picture and try to recreate it, but it never feels 100% correct. 2 dedicated tables would be ideal then, just so I never have to take anything down or put anything away. On the other half, I'd like an octagonal table for eating and playing euchre or poker. You can tell which state Stiltskin Kupo 84 is from. Mm-hmm. Or some quick board games. And a pool table for winding down would also be nice. On one wall, I would like to have a bachelor kitchen behind a bar area. My bachelor kitchen would include a microwave, industrial pizza oven to heat things up. So he just needs a conveyor belt from the pizzeria. Right.
Yep.
A pantry full of chips and or breakfast food, and a fridge big enough for storing Gatorade, pop, spirits, and holiday hors d'oeuvres. Paper and plastic dinnerware are a must. I might have the smallest possible kitchen sink I could find, but not one good for doing any major dishes, mostly just to use as a water source for wetting a rag or cleaning surfaces, etc. Absolutely zero dishes that can't be thrown away would be allowed in the basement. I might have a bottle of Dawn down there for quick cleaning platter dishes before running them upstairs. And I might have a kitchen knife block and a small assortment of serving ladles and spoons, but absolutely zero permanent table settings of any kind.
It's very, very adamant.
Very
about
thorough.
This. I like it.
And hey, nobody else said 4 tables.
Sure.
So I think
sure.
Stiltskin Kubo 84 has us all beat.
Right.
And then just 2 more quick ones. Floofy Shoob says, my game room only needs one feature in particular, a Star Trek transporter pad so everyone can show up no matter how far away they are. Sorry, man, I'm not going to be able to make it to game tonight. My wife says, sparkly noises. And then Dustin says, carved stone walls with recessed fire lighting, large oak table with cubbies for books, built-in metal grid with erasable overlay and built-in dice towers, hidden snack safe with tea kettle. There you go. Got all the bases covered.
Hidden snack safe.
Yep. That was the last social media question. The next one is, what is a contradictory or non-standard character archetype you have played? So we kind of already talked about this.
Ninja Turtle. Wait, hold on.
There you go.
I can't think of anything off the top of my head, honestly.
Yeah.
The one that
I mean, I guess I can't, other than the examples I gave earlier. What examples
right,
did I
yeah,
give
like
earlier?
ones that I've played, I don't know. I was trying to think. Well, I did have once. I had a halfling monk paladin, but I mean, I guess that's not like totally off the wall.
Yeah.
But then the reason why I made a halfling monk paladin was so I can get the absolute best saves possible.
Okay.
This was back in like third edition, I think, or 3.5 or something like that.
Sure.
It's like halflings got a +1 to all their saves. Monks had the best, had like all good saves as far as their base save, and then paladins got to add their charisma to all their saves. So it was
sure.
It was just I was trying to make something that was like really good at making saves because I think we were running through the Tomb of Horrors or something.
Sure. So, as far as ones that I've actually played, I'm actually kind of blanking on. I don't know I know there's a ton that I've made.
Sure.
But as far as ones that I've actually played in a game, especially for like more than one session, I don't know. I'll have to actually think about that between now and next time.
Okay.
I know that I played in a play-by-post game. I played a dwarf barbarian, but personality and such wise, like theming wise, he was just like an average person, lived in a city where he was a miner, I think, like he worked in a mine, and he didn't know where his power came from. It's not that he like got really angry. It's just that this like some sort of like a spirit overtook him. And during that period, he would just go all out. You would, get super powerful, super strong and all that kind of stuff. I guess that's the closest that comes to mind just off the top of my head. So yeah, I'll try to think about that for next time. And I'm interested in seeing what some of our listeners have come up with as well.
Yeah.
All right. That'll do it for our questions for today. So before we close out, let's wind down a little bit. Let's relax. Let's take a deep breath. Let's remember those who have come before us, who have set aside the archetypes and have I don't know, thrown some darts or something in ranged combat. As we remember those who have come before us, as we toss another log onto the funeral pyre. Today's funeral pyre was submitted by Froggy14Fresh on Reddit. And the story goes as follows. 1 shot, 3 kills. I murdered our ranger's brand new tiger whilst shaking and stomping through the wild magic desert right before annihilating the boulette that did the deed, and by collateral, our dwarf player Rock Power Colt with a scroll of Acid Orb. My druid is still convinced Acid Orb is the most outrageously powerful spell he's come across to date. However, it says in parentheses, the Acid Orb was affected by the wild magic and rolled for randomly by our DM on a D100. It was replaced with a Ray of Disintegration.
Oh, my goodness.
So I'm guessing that they cast Acid Orb, which normally would splash and hit other people too, and the DM rolled on the wild magic thing, and instead of getting hit with acid, they all got disintegrated via collateral damage.
Oh my goodness.
So, oh boy. I guess let's raise a glass in memory of the tiger, the boulet, and the dwarf rock power cult, who remind us that's wild. Clink. All right, that'll do it for today. To submit questions for us to discuss, items for the Dragon's Hoard, or stories for the Funeral Pyre, please email us at interpartyconflict@gmail.com. For show notes, links to media mentioned on the show, and running lists of questions and magic items, go to interpartyconflict.com. Join the discussion on social media. Find us on Facebook. We're on Reddit. We're on Discord. We're on Twitter @InPartyConflict. We've got our weekly social media questions, and if you answer them, your answers might end up on the show. Find us on the podcatcher of your choice, iTunes, Google Play Music, Stitcher, YouTube, Spotify, all that. Anywhere you download podcasts, please rate, review, subscribe, or just tell a friend. If you'd like to support the show, check out the rewards at patreon.com/InterPartyConflict. We have a few different tiers, so anything you can spare, even $1 a month, would go towards making the show better, and you'll get bonus content for it. And also, let me just interject in here, go check out Honor Tips and Tricks Volume 2. Just came out. It's awesome. Jeff, tell us about FriendQuest.
FriendQuest is a YouTube channel where we play video games.
Yes. Speaking of video games, check out my side project, the Arcade Memories Podcast. If you want to submit anything for it, you can send that to arcadememoriespodcast@gmail.com. Also head over to bit.ly/interpartyconflict to take a short survey about our show. What you like, what you don't like, etc. And just for taking it, you'll get 2 free printable board games courtesy of Mary and Tom over at hollandspiel.com. And our music is made by Boxcat Games from Nameless the Hacker's RPG. So, Jeff, until next time.
Gabe, I have an idea for an outro, but I don't think you're going to like it.
Is that the outro, or are you telling me you have an idea?
That will be the outro that you will put in.
Okay.
But set me up for another one.
Okay. And so, Jeff, until next time, the show's over.